The universe had long been a place of peace and cooperation. For centuries, various alien species had thrived together, forming a complex web of alliances and peaceful coexistence. Planets, once isolated, now shared knowledge, trade, and culture. The Galactic Council, made up of the greatest civilizations, ensured stability. It was a time of unity, where each species had its role in the grand scheme of things. But that peace began to crumble when reports from across the stars grew more unsettling by the day. The first whispers came from distant systems, strange, haunting signals that nobody could decode. They were followed by terrifying news. Entire worlds had gone silent, consumed by an unknown dark force. It was as if the very stars themselves had been swallowed whole. In a matter of weeks, the reports spread like wildfire and panic took hold of the galaxy. No one knew what this force was or how to stop it. It was as though it wasn't just destroying planets. It was erasing them from existence. No ships had returned to tell the tale. No survivors, no trace of life. Entire star systems, civilizations, all wiped from the map. The galaxy's proudest races, once confident in their power, now found themselves paralyzed with fear. They had seen wars and conflict, but nothing like this. This wasn't a battle. They couldn't even fight back. What was this enemy? This shadow? It didn't fight with weapons or ships. It spread like darkness, suffocating everything in its path. The once formidable fleets of the Galactic Defense Forces were powerless against it. In desperation, the leaders of the various species called for the evacuation of their worlds. A mass exodus began. The alien coalition, once a symbol of unity, fractured as each species scrambled to save their people. Planets, cities, and entire colonies were abandoned. The aliens fled to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, hoping to outrun the unknown force that had already begun to consume their homes. No one knew if any of them would make it out alive, but survival became the only priority. The galaxy's once thriving civilizations scattered into the vast unknown, leaving behind their homes, their legacy, and their sense of safety. Amid this chaos, Earth remained a calm, resolute beacon in the storm. While every other species in the galaxy was in panic mode, humanity stood firm. As reports of the Harrow's destruction continued to pour in, Earth's leaders gathered in urgent meetings. The world watched as its leaders made an unprecedented decision. They would not abandon their home. "We stand our ground," they declared. The citizens of Earth, long accustomed to fighting for survival on their own planet, agreed with their leadership. Their ancestors had fought wars, weathered plagues, and faced countless other challenges. If anything, humanity was built on the HFY foundation of never giving up, no matter the odds. Earth's military forces were mobilized, not to escape, but to prepare. Humans were known for their ingenuity, and this moment called for every ounce of creativity and resolve they had. As alien ships fled to distant stars, humans made their own preparations. Earth's forces began developing new technologies, advanced defense systems and weapons capable of counteracting the darkness that threatened to overtake them. The government reached out to humanity's colonies, instructing them to hold firm and bolster Earth's defenses. On Earth itself, people came together in a way never seen before, united by a common purpose. Cities were fortified, and resources were stockpiled for a prolonged fight. The rest of the galaxy, meanwhile, looked on in disbelief. While their worlds were crumbling, Earth stood defiant, like a lone sentinel amidst the chaos. The aliens could not understand why humans refused to flee. They saw Earth's resolve as foolish, even reckless. But the humans knew something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. The value of standing strong, of facing an enemy without flinching. As the galaxy's mightiest civilizations ran for their lives, humanity remained. While they had no idea what the Harrow was or how to defeat it, they understood one thing. Earth was their home, and they would not abandon it. The galaxy might fall, but not without a fight. This was the beginning of something no one had expected. And perhaps the rest of the galaxy would soon realize that humanity, with all its flaws, had something far stronger than fear, an unyielding will to protect what was theirs. The Harrow's arrival was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. It didn't come as a fleet of ships or a sudden barrage of weapons. Instead, it arrived silently, like a dark fog rolling across the stars, erasing everything in its path. Entire star systems blinked out of existence, their suns fading into nothingness. No explosions, no battles, just an overwhelming emptiness. It was as though the very essence of the galaxy was being drained away. No one knew exactly what it was. Some said it was a being of pure energy. Others whispered that it was an ancient force, a shadow that had existed long before the galaxy itself. Regardless of what it was, one thing was certain: it was unstoppable. The galaxy's most powerful fleets tried to engage it, but their ships were useless. Weapons fired into the darkness, only to disappear without leaving a trace. The finest minds across the galaxy worked tirelessly to find a way to stop it, but nothing worked. Panic spread as worlds fell one after another, leaving nothing but blackened voids where thriving civilizations once stood. As the galaxy watched in fear, Earth remained a solitary beacon of defiance. The people of Earth, who had long been accustomed to challenges, felt the weight of something far greater than any threat they had ever faced. The Harrow was here, and it was coming for them. Earth's military began preparing for the worst. Defensive systems were upgraded, and every available resource was pooled into building the best defense humanity could muster. Though the threat seemed insurmountable, there was something about the human spirit that refused to bend to fear. Earth would stand, no matter what. The world waited, tense, as the first signs of the Harrow's approach began to flicker in their sensors. It was no longer just a distant threat. It was coming. And soon, humanity would have to face it head-on. The first direct assault came without warning. It was as though the universe itself had turned against Earth. The skies darkened, and strange distortions began to appear in space, stretching across the atmosphere like fingers of shadow. Then, the ground trembled. Humanity watched in horror as alien creatures, beasts that had once been thought invincible, began to change. These beings, which had once been fierce warriors, fell under the influence of the Harrow. They stopped fighting, their minds turned into empty shells, their bodies now mere puppets of the darkness that had consumed them. They began attacking anything in sight, spreading terror across the earth. The very creatures that had once been enemies of humanity were now twisted into weapons of mass destruction. But humanity refused to panic. Despite the chaos, they fought back with everything. They had soldiers, engineers, scientists, all worked together, not just to defend, but to fight back against an enemy they didn't fully understand. The battle on Earth was brutal, but humanity's ingenuity began to shine through. Though the Harrow's influence seemed endless, humans refused to give up. They worked tirelessly, utilizing every scrap of technology and knowledge they could. It was their creative spirit that kept them fighting, even when the odds seemed impossible. Earth's military forces, bolstered by cutting-edge AI systems and advanced technology, developed a series of countermeasures. They began to understand the Harrow's influence. It wasn't just physical, it was a mental force, one that preyed on fear, despair, and weakness. Using this insight, humanity devised a strategy to shield themselves from the darkness. The Sci military deployed electromagnetic shields to protect key cities, while researchers worked on a method to sever the Harrow's connection to the creatures it controlled. It was a difficult and dangerous plan, but it was their only chance. And then, against all odds, something extraordinary happened. As the Harrow's first wave closed in on Earth, humanity's defenses held strong. The shield systems, still in their infancy, managed to repel the initial assault. The Harrow's creatures, their minds still under the influence of the darkness, were stopped at Earth's atmosphere, an unexpected victory that stunned both Earth's defenders and the galaxy. It wasn't a complete win, but it was a glimmer of hope in a universe that had almost forgotten what it meant to hope. Humanity had shown that they could stand against the darkness, that they could fight. For the first time since the Harrow's arrival, there was a spark of something else in the galaxy: belief. The belief that maybe, just maybe, humanity could survive this. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep fighting, enough to inspire hope in the darkest of times. As Earth stood resilient against the Harrow's first assault, the rest of the galaxy continued to fall into disarray. The once proud alliances of alien civilizations began to fracture, with each species scrambling to protect its own. The unity that had once defined the Galactic Council now seemed like a distant dream. Planets and fleets were abandoned, entire systems left behind as the galaxy's finest races fled to the farthest corners of space, hoping that distance could shield them from the growing darkness. Those who refused to abandon their homes were quickly overwhelmed, their forces shattered, their worlds consumed by the Harrow's relentless advance. For many, survival was the only goal left. Fighting the Harrow was no longer an option, it seemed. They had given up hope of winning, but in the midst of all this chaos, Earth stood as a solitary beacon. Humanity, though surrounded by the fear and destruction of the galaxy, refused to surrender. The people of Earth had faced challenges before, from wars to natural disasters, but this was unlike anything they had encountered. Their response was unwavering. The moment they realized they had a chance to stand and fight, they took it. But they didn't stop there. Humanity knew that if they were to defeat the Harrow, they couldn't do it alone. They needed to rally the scattered species, to unite what remained of the galaxy's defenses. They extended their hand to the alien races that were still fighting, to hold on to their existence, offering aid, technology, and most importantly, hope. The message was clear: join us. Together, we can face the darkness. At first, many species were hesitant. Some were too broken, too afraid to believe that anything could stand against the Harrow. They had seen the destruction, witnessed their homes fall to the abyss. Trusting humanity seemed impossible, especially after all that had happened. But Earth's steadfastness began to change their minds. Slowly, one by one, species that had once looked down on humans as insignificant began to listen. The promise of unity, of a force capable of fighting back, began to spark a glimmer of hope in the hearts of the galaxy's survivors. Humanity's resilience, their refusal to back down even when the odds seemed impossible, proved to be their greatest strength. The advanced technology humanity had developed, particularly the countermeasures that had saved Earth, began to show promise. In fighting the Harrow, alien leaders began to see that Earth's determination wasn't just a bluff, it was real. And so, a new kind of alliance began to take shape. It wasn't the grand coalition that had once ruled the galaxy, but it was something stronger. It was a coalition driven by necessity, forged in the fires of desperation. Earth, once a lone voice among many, became its leader. The species that had once dismissed humanity now found themselves following its lead, learning from the creativity and tactical brilliance humans displayed in the face of the Harrow. Humans shared their tactics and technology freely, helping to train alien species in how to fight the darkness that consumed their minds and worlds. Advanced species, once thought to be superior, found themselves working side by side with humans, learning new ways to approach the fight against the Harrow. Humanity, which had once been considered weak, now stood as the unifying force against the galaxy's greatest threat. As the coalition formed, the true power of unity became evident. Alien races that had been at war with each other now stood together, driven by the common goal of survival. The leadership of Earth, though born out of necessity, became a symbol of strength and hope. Humanity's role as the heart of this new resistance force was unexpected, but undeniable. The once fractured galaxy now had a single, focused purpose: to fight back. The human-led coalition became a growing force, gaining momentum as more and more species joined the fight. No longer were they scattered and isolated. They were united in a common cause, drawing on the strength of each race, working together to push back against the Harrow. What had once seemed impossible was now becoming a reality. The Harrow, a force that had swept through the galaxy with no resistance, was finally facing an organized and determined opponent. It was no longer just a matter of survival for Earth. It had become a fight for the galaxy itself. Humanity, once thought to be just a small and insignificant part of the universe, had become the beating heart of the galaxy's resistance. The Harrow had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now it would learn that underestimating Earth was its greatest mistake. As the coalition rallied together under the banner of humanity's leadership, the galaxy's survivors saw that there was still hope, and hope, once sparked, is a force more powerful than even the darkness. The war to reclaim the galaxy had begun. Under humanity's leadership, a massive, coordinated campaign spread across the stars. The scattered, once divided alien species that had fled or fought alone now united under a single banner: Earth. The galaxy, once full of fractured alliances, was now a strong, cohesive force, with humanity leading the charge. What had once seemed impossible was becoming reality. From Earth's military forces to the advanced alien fleets, they now worked hand in hand, sharing resources, strategies, and a common goal. The Harrow, a force that had erased entire civilizations, was finally facing an organized resistance, one that was proving to be as relentless as the darkness it sought to spread. Earth's military, now bolstered by the best of the galaxies, soldiers and tacticians, became a beacon of hope. Their strength, resourcefulness, and unyielding will made them the heart of the rebellion. Across the galaxy, as the coalition forces rallied behind humanity, it became clear: the tide was turning. They would not let the Harrow consume the galaxy without a fight. Humanity's ingenuity, the very thing that had always been their greatest strength, had never been more crucial. As the war dragged on, Earth's scientists and engineers worked day and night, creating new and unexpected technologies to counter the Harrow's overwhelming influence. It was their creativity and their ability to think outside the box that had kept the galaxy from total collapse. The ultimate breakthrough came in the form of a unique weapon, a cosmic frequency disruptor. This device, designed to target the very energy that fueled the Harrow's dark presence, was humanity's answer to the seemingly unstoppable force. It wasn't a weapon of destruction, it was a weapon of disruption. The disruptor created a frequency that interfered with the Harrow's ability to feed on the fear and despair of the galaxy's inhabitants, weakening its influence. This gave the galaxy a vital window of opportunity, buying precious time for the resistance forces to regroup, reorganize, and prepare for the final confrontation. It was a daring plan, one that required immense courage and coordination. But it worked. The Harrow's power began to falter. The galaxy's survivors, emboldened by this victory, knew the final battle was at hand. The battle of the last stand took place on a desolate alien world, once a thriving center of culture and technology, now reduced to a shadow of its former self by the Harrow's consuming power. This planet was the last key to the Harrow's dominance over the galaxy. If the Resistance could defeat it here, they would break the Harrow's hold and push it back once and for all. The united forces, under human command, launched a desperate assault on the planet's surface, knowing that this might be their final chance. The battle was fierce. The Harrow's creatures, mindless puppets of the darkness, fought without mercy, their numbers seemingly endless. The resistance forces, now composed of humans and their alien allies, pushed forward with everything they had. They fought not just with weapons, but with something more powerful: willpower. The very thing the Harrow fed on was now the one thing that could defeat it. The strength of the mind, the refusal to give in to fear and despair. As the battle raged on, the true nature of the Harrow was revealed. It was not just a mindless force, it was a creature of dark energy, a parasite that thrived on the emotions of its victims. The more fear, the more hopelessness it generated, the stronger it became. It was an enemy that couldn't be defeated by mere physical strength alone. The battle wasn't just against the Harrow's forces, it was a war against fear itself. Humanity, the species that had once seemed so small and insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy, now stood as the cornerstone of the resistance. They fought with everything they had, every ounce of courage, every scrap of strength. They refused to let the galaxy fall to this dark force. As the final push was made, the cosmic frequency disruptor was deployed, its hum filling the air as the resistance forces made their final stand. The Harrow's power began to wane, its dark influence retreating in the face of humanity's unwavering resolve. The Harrow, once an unstoppable force, finally began to falter. The resistance, led by humanity, had proven that willpower and unity could defeat even the darkest of foes. The final battle wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future of the galaxy. The galaxy had not only regained its hope, but it had rediscovered its strength. In the end, humanity had become the galaxy's savior, against all odds, against all expectations. The war was far from over, but this victory proved one thing: the galaxy had underestimated humanity. And that mistake would cost the Harrow dearly. The final confrontation had arrived, and it was humanity's ingenuity that led the charge. The galaxy had been fractured, its species driven to the edge of extinction by the unstoppable darkness of the Harrow. Yet, in the face of overwhelming odds, Earth had emerged as the unifying force. The cosmic frequency disruptor, the weapon born of human creativity and determination, had turned the tide. Together with the sacrifices of countless alien species who had fought alongside humanity, the Harrow's dark grip on the galaxy finally began to unravel. It wasn't just a victory of technology or strength. It was the victory of unity. The Harrow, a force that thrived on fear and despair, had been met with a force stronger still: the unwavering will to protect and survive. As the final blow struck, the Harrow's presence faltered and faded. The galaxy, once on the brink of annihilation, was finally free. The stars that had been consumed by the darkness began to shine again. The destruction, though vast, could now be reversed. With the threat eradicated, the work of healing and rebuilding began. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new era. In the aftermath of the war, the galaxy was forever changed. The once scattered species, each struggling to survive on their own, now came together to form a new council of worlds. The defeat of the Harrow had proven that unity, no matter how impossible it seemed, was the key to survival. Earth, which had once been seen as an insignificant planet in the vastness of space, had become the heart of this new alliance. Humanity had earned its place not just as a member of the galaxy's community, but as a leader, a symbol of resilience, hope, and determination. As the galaxy began to heal, it was clear that Earth was now the beacon for a united future. The council that formed in the wake of the war was unlike any that had existed before. Gone were the old divisions between species, replaced by a shared commitment to protect the galaxy and prevent another force like the Harrow from ever rising again. But humanity's triumph was more than just a victory over the darkness. It was a testament to what could be achieved when the will to fight for one's home, for one's people, was stronger than any fear. Earth had not only survived the Harrow's wrath, it had led the charge to defeat it, proving to the galaxy that humanity's spirit was not to be underestimated. The once scattered races now looked to Earth not with fear or pity, but with respect. Humanity had become the pillar upon which the galaxy could rebuild. Earth's military, once seen as just another force in the galaxy, now became the core of the new galactic defense system. Its scientists, engineers, and leaders were called upon to guide the rebuilding efforts, ensuring that the galaxy never again fell to such a dark force. As the dust settled and the galaxy began to heal, Earth was celebrated as a hero among the stars. The once hopeful planet, now a symbol of perseverance, stood as the cornerstone of a new age. The scars of war were still present, but they were a reminder of what had been achieved, of the unity that had brought the galaxy together. Humanity's legacy would be written not in the ashes of defeated foes, but in the hope they had inspired. The galaxy, forever indebted to the bravery of humankind, now had a new purpose: to protect what had been saved and to ensure that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. The story of humanity's triumph closed with a hopeful note. Earth had once been a solitary planet among many, but now humanity itself had become a cornerstone of strength for the galaxy. No longer was Earth alone, standing against the tide of darkness. Now, humanity stood as the pillar of the galaxy's future, its spirit and resilience the driving force behind the rebuilding efforts. With humanity's leadership, the galaxy began a new chapter, one where unity, courage, and hope were the foundations of peace. As the stars gleamed brighter once more, there was no doubt. This was the dawn of a new era, one where humanity's influence would guide the galaxy toward a future of prosperity and protection, ready to face whatever threats may come.